just begin that our government just implement the sexual image processing center, and they have the VIP, the green channels with this large platform like Meta or Google, so they can be to allow the nonprofit and the sexual image processing center to do the rapid takedown for this NCII image. And if this platform are not compliant, the TWSIG, the Taiwan Network and Information Center, can be seized the domain name via the domain name system response policy zone. They can even block the internet access to Taiwan for this uncompliance overseas platform. So this part, it can be create a more safer online environment for the Taiwanese user. So I think this can be the collective action to prevent the sex torsion. Maybe I can share this kind of mechanism later. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Cheng, for that comprehensive insights into why the youth may opt for these applications due to the multiple advantages that they seem to give. However, we must note that the youth are vulnerable, as these dangers may be placing them because youth place too much trust in these applications, in these emerging technologies or already existing technologies. And I think this is a great segue into Agita, with your experience in Bullyid, the mobile application. The question that I would like to ask you is, what are the best practices that could be applied in developing countries or developed countries for using digital services centered around mental health?
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Hi, my name is Agita. And I think to just give a little bit of background before I'm going to jump into answering the question. So, Bullyid Indonesia is a tech charity where we are focusing on preventing, responding, and supporting the online harassment victims and survivors using our Bullyid app, which is a web-based application. So majority of our team basically coming from lawyers, psychologists, humanitarian, and tech enthusiasts. So basically, I think when it comes to mental health issues, as we are focusing on online gender-based violence, majority of the mental health is becoming the impact of the cases that happen to them. So I actually shared presentation, so I'm not pretty sure whether you're going to be sharing it, but I list down the 5 online harassment that commonly happen throughout our basically we've been receiving that for the past a few years. So trolling or someone online who deliberately provoking argument. And there is an image-based abuse, which is, I think, quite similar with Cheng Peng just mentioned, is one of the, I think, the most cases that we receive so far: sexual extortion, deep fakes, and impersonation accounts. So those 5 that majority lead to the mental health issues, the psychological impact, the financial loss, and etc. So think coming to what would be the aspect when it comes to what is the best solutions. I would like to address that. First of all, I think obviously when it happened on online platform, I think social media companies must also really take responsibility for the content that is published on their platform. So emphasizing on moderation, it's really, really important. And I think in Australia, the e-safety has been promoting about the safety by design, which in from the observations that we've been doing, I think it's very important for the technological platform to focusing on moderation, escalation, enforcement, which is understanding what happened and how to respond the incidents and pause the pause response or after the reporting platform, the reporting, and then the user empowerment, and then goes to transparency and accountability. So I think it's really important to not just focusing on enabling the reporting or the blocking features on their platform, but also understanding what happened after that. Is there any support that will be given for the victims or the perpetrator? And what happened with the perpetrators? So I think in terms of on top of obviously the multi-stakeholder collaboration with technological platform, governments, academia, civil society, as well as the parents when we're speaking about youth and children and schools. I think technological platform can really emphasize and invest more in terms of the hybrid human machine moderation system. So we have seen how the moderation using the AI, however, it is not fully able to really identify uh, intimate image abuse content. So especially country coming from the Eastern culture or perspective, it is not necessarily has to be completely nude to be considered as a pornographic content. So I think that's kind of a mindset has to be um, understood by the human moderator on the technological platform. So I would say to emphasize on what could the social media platform can really invest in on tackling the youth and the impact of the mental health issues due to online gender-based violence issues is the using hybrid human machine moderation system that could able to identify users who could probably experiencing an acute distress or suicidal thoughts, and it routes them to the crisis lifeline or acts as an intermediary to connect those who are seeking help to a peer support network. So I think it's really, really important to emphasize that social media platform or any internet platform, it could be dating platform, it could be video gaming platform, could really work together and hands to hand with the governments as well as civil society organizations to really tackle the issue. I think I will stop there.
Thank you very much, Agita. I'd just like to note that it's great to see how the youth in Southeast Asia are making great strides in the direction of a safer internet built by the youth for the youth. And I'd just like to summarize your points about the past victims' point of view, along with the main ways that these youth may be placed at risk in the virtual world. And also, it's really nice that you pointed out how different cultures have different understandings and lexical items, if you will, to describe nudity, pornography, or sexual content. Additionally, problems may arise when the victim is in different countries or regions compared to the perpetrator. How would the proper procedure be to make sure that the perpetrator is held accountable for their actions? And I think this is a really good transition into our next speaker, Mo, to talk about the content itself. So how do you think creation of sexual content online, especially on social media sites, may affect the psychological health of youths? For example, their self-perceived worth, body image issues, and self-esteem. Over to you, Mo. Thank you.
Thank you for introduction. Hi, I'm Moe Yamauchi, a PhD student of Keio University in Japan. My discipline is sociology, media theory, and information society theory. Today, I'm introduction about the situation of Japanese sexual selfie. And since my research deals with sensitive photographs, please allow me to explain it verbally today instead of on slides. I have researched the sexual selfie which the young women take with smartphone and post to social media in Japan. Many of them take some pictures of their own nude. These photos are decorated with photo application like Japanese purikura, for example, with some cute symbol, heart, ribbon, and so on. The body in sexual selfie is in better style than real body, and the skin is more brighter. Also, in these photos, their faces are hidden with stamp or pixelated obscuring. in order to prevent identity from being revealed. They post these selfies to social media like Twitter, X now, while keeping anonymity. Many audience, including men and women, see these selfies and they repost or favorite them. I conducted some interviews and talked with them how they think about sexual selfie. And they said that their sexual selfies are the works they create and they show their body what they want to show. So my research revealed that they enjoy experimenting sexual expressions using their own bodies. Their attempt is positioned as a practice of preventing men from looking at them sexually without their permission. In Japan, some researchers see it as a problem that large number of selfie construct the ideal body image and the women are stimulated competition in the point of view feminism study. But based on my research, some women accept their own body image through the sexual selfie or various sexual contents. So I think that online sexual content should be made with the awareness that women's dignity is protected. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mo, for sharing your insights. And I think it's really good to mention how, especially for the young women who are facing the challenges of navigating social media and emerging technologies, coupled with the existing inequalities they face, this may lead to detrimental effects. So your research has really been impactful into raising awareness into why maybe some real-life instances of sexual exploitation online may occur. And I myself personally have a great passion in the domain of online linguistic gender stereotypes, which have the potential to shape and change someone's perception, someone's self-perceived self-worth. So on that note, I'd just like to move on to Justitia. And the question that I have for you is, what are the challenges faced in policy making or policy discussions that touch on the theme of online gender-based violence? Over to you, Justitia.
Thank you, moderator. Could you please share my slide presentation?
Yes, we will be sharing your slides. Do you see them?
Yes, I do.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi everyone. So it's very nice to hear from Cheng, Peng, Moore, and Agita as an intro, because my presentation will be more on the policy making and implementation. So we are lawyers for gender justice. We are based in Indonesia. Next slide, please. And we have basically 42 lawyers and paralegals. We are all volunteers. It's mandated by the law that lawyers should provide pro bono legal services. But these numbers are by no means comparable and proportionate to the extent of like the size of Indonesia, because we basically have 17,000 islands and we cannot cover the entire area. Next, please. So just a little bit before getting into the policy making and policy implementation part, the three main pillars of our organization is holistic assistance, basically providing pro bono legal services, psychological services from our partners, and then rehabilitative measures, and then strategic partnership, definitely, and then legal research and policy advocacy in terms of supporting any judicial review of regulations, of laws, as well as being involved in the legislative process itself. So it's also very related to what Shen Peng has mentioned, because during the pandemic, this collective was established, and
At that time, it's from June 2020 until now, we have received around 465 reports, and then we have basically assisted victims. We got 5 court decisions, and then we have officially became the basically reference as a legal service providers by the government. Next, please. So just a little bit about the case proportion, because the number of non-consensual intimate image and other OGBV, online gender-based violence cases, are very dominant during the pandemic. So as we can see, the NCII makes up 32% of the entire cases that we receive, and then assault definitely, and then sextortion as well as doxing. So basically the blue and then the maroon and the lighter maroon one, those are the OGBV case proportion. And again, the victims are predominantly female, although we have also received reports from transgender people and non-binary people. Next, please. So in terms of the policy situation in Indonesia, we have this draconian law, if I may say. It's called the Electronic Information and Transactions Law, which basically prescribes the criminalization of the dissemination of content against propriety, which basically use the moral standards, acceptable behavior, the religious values, this kind of thing. This is like an umbrella term to accommodate all of the social standards in the society. But the problem with this law, with that particular legal profession, is it's often used to criminalize victims of OGBV or various or particularly NCII, because they were seen as the first person who made and shared the content, despite despite the consent for it to be merely for private use. So it's funny because there's this. It's not funny, but it's sad. It's ironic because it's not only the victims, but also, for example, the boyfriends, and then when it goes to the social medias, people who retweets the content, they can also be criminalized by this law. So the problem with this law is that government is more focused on combating immoral and pornographic contents. They are more focused on the contents, but not toward the rehabilitation and protection of the victims. And this law is also being used to criminalize, to basically file a complaint under defamation, and it's being used often by perpetrators to retaliate against the victims as well as the lawyers. Next, please. But in 2022, we have this new sexual violence law, which is very progressive. It addressed the OGBV. It addressed the victim's right to demand the deletion of any OGBV related content, the takedown, or basically the takedown, limiting access to the OGBV related content. But now the problem is this law is still very new. It needs implementing regulation. And the problem with the deletion of OGBV related content is that who has the mandate to decide if the content is really is made or disseminated in relation to OGBV, because that they touch on the law enforcement domain. And then who will give the permission to delete? Is it the police? Is it the judges? Is it the court? Or is it the Ministry of Information? And then will the platform still keep the copies? And then when it comes to the legal process itself, many law enforcement agencies in Indonesia, they still want the content to be live because they need the URL. And that's also the reason why many of them are reluctant to accommodate this right, because once it's being deleted, it's no longer online, and then the forensic process will be hampered. Those kind of excuses basically. And the situation is that both of these law, both the sexual violence law and the electronic and information transaction law, they coexist right now, and law enforcement agencies, they can choose either way. But these two laws, they have completely different approach when it comes to GBV. So the situation right now is really, in terms of the policy making, it's ensuring the implementing regulation can accommodate the rights, the operationalization of the rights, and then clarifying the mandates of each government agencies. And in terms of the implementation, definitely it requires training for the law enforcement agencies, because many of them, they still don't know what the sexual violence law is. They keep referring to the very old law that we had in Indonesia. That still happens. And also in terms of implementation, definitely having this close coordination with platforms, because as Ms. Agita has mentioned, it's also under their responsibility to regulate and moderate and to respond immediately to any of these requests. Next, I think that's, yeah. Thank you so much. Sorry if it takes too much time. Thanks.
No worries.
Back to you, Moderator.
We're right on time. Thank you, Justitia, for your sharing about your organization and the current initiatives you're engaged in to help create an internet that youth can trust and use safely. And it's just really amazing and worrying, in fact, that just how quickly someone's intimate photos might be shared without their consent. And also on behalf of the youth, I'd like to thank you for including all youth communities in your presentation, truly leaving no community behind. It's been really good so far to get input from different stakeholders regarding this issue, and this truly is a sign of us practicing the multi-stakeholder approach in addressing issues related to youth in internet governance. And I believe that we've reached the open for discussion part of this panel discussion. And before I ask the speakers any follow-up questions, I'd like to open up the floor if they have any questions to ask, or the online participants. I believe we do have one. Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Alia. So this question is open to any of the speakers. With the ongoing discussion that we are having now, I noticed that the issue of child sexual exploitation has not been mentioned. And when we talk about child exploitation, it entails those aged 18 and under. And this age group do not know better, and they are often pressured by the peers. So my question is, I would just like to ask for your any of you's input and thoughts on this particular issue. Thank you.
I can answer that in terms of I think it's a very good question, Alia. We often do basically emphasizing on the non-consensual intimate image abuse, which NCII is mainly focusing on young people from 18 plus above. We consider them, already being able to stand, in front of the law. However, I think there is quite a lot of issues within the children as well. I'm not really sure in which way that you would like to emphasize more, but I think NMAC, so it's an international organization that pretty much has been working in terms of tackling the child sexual exploitation online. And so there is quite a lot of organization that has already put in place, and majority in every single country when it comes to children, they have a specific regulations and laws to be in place in order to prosecute the perpetrator. Now, I think the reasons why I think we're emphasizing more towards the young people, which means somebody who's above the 18 years old, because the current regulations is definitely very biased. However, in child exploitations online, I think in terms of an international regulation, it's already being in place, and the collaboration um, among the law enforcement, among the government, has been quite strong compared to addressing one of the main challenge that we've been discussing about online gender-based violence, that focusing on young people, which is above 18 years old and plus. This is a very complex and often considered very cross-border nature of the problem. So we see that the victims and perpetrators may be located in different countries, and making it very difficult for law enforcement to prosecute offenders and protect the victims. Now, on the aspect of the children, it is completely illegal, and it's a crime to exploit children in any way in terms of pornography or sexual activity. Now, when it comes to young people, especially for those who are 18 years old and plus, if they already have any relations, that become a very complications issues in terms of in terms of the investigations and providing the evidence. So I think at least from my side, why I'm more focusing on specifying and emphasizing the conversation for today on the online gender-based violence, mainly for image-based abuse for the young people and above, because I would like to emphasize that I think it is very important. We can recall, we all here as a young people, and you have the power for you to speak up and also to influence and advocate in your country. On top of a social media company responsibility, there's also a huge responsibility of law enforcement and a government in the country in order to collaborate together, because we are lacking of a international legal framework and collaboration to address online gender-based violence, especially when it comes to cross-border jurisdiction, different countries, and it's leaving victims without adequate protection and support. So I'm going to stop there, but I think some of my other speakers in here could really add on something on that. Thank you.
If I may add, thanks so much, Ms. Agita, for addressing the landscape, the situation. But yeah, during the pandemic, we have also received a case. So it's basically a network of hackers exploiting minor contents, intimate contents from minors, and we weren't able to do anything about it because many of in terms of the law enforcement agencies, sometimes it really falls down to the mutual legal agreements that is owned between countries. So, for example, Indonesia has a MLA with Malaysia, with Singapore, and then if there's any cross-jurisdictional case, we can also ask assistance from the government, from the foreign government, where the perpetrator is located to prosecute the case. But that's not the case that's not really the case with child exploitation, because most of those MLA agreements are very specific to serious crimes such as terrorism and money laundering, things like that. So I can say that in terms of the law enforcement agencies itself, they're not putting so much focus. They're not really prioritizing cross-jurisdictional online gender-based violence. And also in terms of because I'm a lawyer and our organization provide pro bono legal services, it's very difficult for us. It's almost impossible for us to help young people under 18 because we need the power of attorney. And there's a age requirement for that, for someone to give you the power to represent. So in Indonesia, it's 18 years old. But the problem is many of these young people, they are also LGBTIQ, and they're not open yet to their family. They're not open to basically to society. So there are layers and layers of things that has to be unpacked, and it's very complex, because without power of attorney coming from the family, we cannot really represent them. So that's also the additional complexity with the young people, with the cases, LGBT cases, involving young people, especially if they are LGBTIQ communities. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Avila, for raise the importance that the child sexual abuse, because recently in Taiwan, the government just amended this kind of regulation as well. On this kind of sexual exploitation of children and youth people, the penalties for offensive involving minors can be increased, has been increased. This kind of crime can be filming or distributing such images can be imprisoned up to 10 years, and from for creation and distribution, and even possession without a valid reason has been changed to a penalty can be a maximum sentence for a year. So we are really paying a lot of attention to address the children sexual abuse cannot be tolerated. And I think beside the criminal, the law, I think the cultural aspect should be raised as well, because for a children or a teenager, they are really having a demand. They're trying to explore what sex or sexual culture to them. They are trying to explore what their body is. So I think our culture, our cultural or society should allow this kind of issue to be discussed in our family. The parents or the family member should be able to talk this kind of topic, the sexual topic, with their own child or teenager, because if their interest of sex is not fulfilled in their own family, they will try to use internet, because everyone can use internet in nowadays. So the children can be able to discuss this kind of topic in their household in a safe way, instead of talking about sex on the internet with a total stranger. So the society's discussion on sexual topic shouldn't lean conservative in the Asia Pacific area. Thanks.
Thank you, Cheng Peng. I think Mo would like to give her insights as well.
Yes, I talked shortly. In Japan, there is a program called revenge porn. Young women's sexual photo distribute after breaking up with her boyfriend, and it among young people's problem. And if there is, I think it is important that if there is agreement with women and men, I think that the young people should think about their own body image, and if they can explore their photo and body to social media. So, and it is also and adult thing too. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mo. Do we have any more questions from the floor? Right, we have one, two, three. Okay.
Hi, so my name is Charlotte. So I noticed throughout the discussion there's significant tensions between protecting the victims of non-consensual content online, but also allowing people to have sexual autonomy. So especially I was interested by the example that Moe provided on how in Japan there are some women who are posting out of free will. And you could even say that they feel empowered by the fact that they can choose what parts of themselves that they post online. Whereas Indonesia, there's more focus on criminalizing the actual content, if I understand correctly. So my question was, how do you guys see the governments balancing the protection of victims of online abuse while also allowing for sexual autonomy for others? And also, realistically, would it even be possible for international policies to be made, or would it have to just be up to the individual countries and their own cultural nuances? Thank you. Yeah, I think I would like to get maybe an answer from this Justitia as a lawyer from Indonesia, and maybe Moe on your surveys and maybe your findings on the other side of this.
All right. I'll start first. Thanks for the question. That's a very difficult question, to be honest. Because I mean, in terms of the cultural nuances and then the population, Indonesia is basically the biggest Muslim population in the world, so it's a bit difficult. I mean, there are so many moral standard, religious standards, and then again cultural nuances in each island, in each tribe. So it's just such a diverse country with distinct different approaches in different areas. So I would say that for now, at least, our government, there's been tension between the ministry which basically works on the issue of women empowerment and child protection, with the other ministry like Ministry of Religion and then Ministry of Communication and Technology. So it's a very political situation, which it shouldn't be. But I think my short answer is it is very difficult to balance those two, because even in the provinces, in the regions, they can develop their own regulation, like government regulation, criminalizing any act, any content against any content, any content or any actions against the religious standard. So yeah, Indonesia is a very complex in terms of the moral standards and the regulation and the dynamics really in the government. Yeah, that's from me.
From my opinion, in Japan these days, the women who post their sexual selfie to social media is arrested by police, and Japanese law, Japanese government made the law which the Japanese adult content, pornography, or help so the Japanese law is Japanese law. In Japanese law, it is difficult to arrest the women post sexual selfie in the way of illegal. So, but it is because there is the thought about freedom, so to creation and some works. So, and it is so difficult problem in Japan. In Japan social media, it is talked about. So it is a very difficult problem about as a very difficult problem. So, and I should think about it. So I researched my research. So sorry for I'm not good at English. So
It's a great input, Moe. Thank you very much. I think we have just about time for 2 more questions from the floor.
Hello everyone, my name is Isan. Maybe it's open for any speaker, but if the time is up, maybe it's just for Justitia and Cheng. Some young age and juvenile lately, there are some trends to post sexual things like sexiness or sleeping with GF or BF or something like that, and make it like some cool achievement for them, and to post it with many social media, and many of young people is normalize it. And what do you think about it? And how we define it when many people normalize it? Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah.
I do have a question, is that personally from my experience in Vietnam, I can see that the age of young people that are exposed to sexual content are decreasing. That's from my point of view, because when I was in high school, I can see that, like compared to people that are older than me, there are, like lots of young teenagers at only in their secondary school, like 10, 12 years old. They have already been exposed to nudes or pornography. But at the same time, Vietnamese governments have not, integrated any educational programs about sexuals or safety and sex in secondary or high schools. I'm not sure about other, situations in different Asian countries. So could you guys, give any opinions about that and any reason why it is not happening right now? Thank you.
I'd just like to invite any speakers who would like to respond to those 2 questions, as we are running pretty short on time.
Okay, I'll answer just very quickly on the first question. I'm not sure it's within my expertise to provide any legitimate answer on that. But in terms of the law, um, again, if that's basically sexual interaction among minors, the thing about having consent, being able to give consent, is that uh, in front of the law, you need to be at least 18 years old for your consent, for you to be able to give consent. So if it's done with an adult, definitely it's a crime. But if it's just among teenagers and they are under 18 and they make their own content, as long as I feel like at this point, they have to be really aware of the situation. We need to, again, as mentioned, as also implied by the second question, the importance of education, to make them aware that um, even when they say it's for private use, again, the situation in Indonesia is not really friendly to that kind of reason. So I think at this point it's not on the we need to push forward the agenda on the physical education campaigns, building awareness among the young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justitia. And just like to confirm if there are any other speakers who would like to provide their insights. If not, I'm going to wrap up this panel discussion.
Yes, thank you from the participant from Vietnam. I think you brought up a very important subject, that is we need more or an inclusive and comprehend sexual education within the school from the children. They are learning this kind of or everything. They can start to recognize or to start to learn what kinds of sexual stuff is not so dangerous, or it won't make it very don't prevent this kind of stuff. Lots of very different stuff. I think you should brought when there's kids in the elementary school. So back in 10 years 10 years before in Taiwan, when I was a kid, the government started an inclusive sexual education program that will include like the how the sex works, or the LGBTQ. Or so when I was a kid, we can start to learn about the different sexual like LGBTQ or stuff like that, so we can be more inclusive and to be more not so arrogant, not so ignorant about this kind of stuff, so we can be more learn about this kind of stuff. So even though our elder people are not still very comfortable about discussion on sexual topic, but I think the youth people in Taiwan can be not so conservative about this kind of issue, so we can not doing stupid stuff about the sexual on our some anything that is sexual. So I think the more of kind of education that we can doing more good is to allow our children to get more opportunity for interpersonal interaction and self-expression, so they don't have to begin their they don't have to raise their self-esteem via communicating with stranger online. so we can cultivate the children's ability to choose and refuse. This kind of practice, they can effectively reduce the likelihood of such incident occurring in the future.
Thank you very much, Cheng Peng. And just to summarize Cheng Peng's views. Yeah. Sorry.
I just want to share a little bit, just add on a little bit, I think, to one of the questions from Vietnam. Just to share, so we have one of the report as early as 9 years old in Indonesia who already knew how to book prostitution online. So I think this is an emerging issue, and you addressing a very important aspect when it comes to comprehensive sexual education. Here in Indonesia, we don't have that. We have not embedded comprehensive sexual education in our curriculum. And I would really believe that this is an important aspect that we have to emphasize. In my organization, we started to create a curriculum to piloting and to embed the CSE or comprehensive sexual education curriculum for the school as early as 6 years old. And I'm happy to share this to one of the fellow from Vietnam who asked the questions later on. So, but I think once again, the most important aspect it's just not on the top of the on the top of the education per se. If we go back, comprehensive sexual educations and online safety, it has to be embedded and it has to be merged all together. And on top of that, beyond the educating the children, it is also important to basically collaborate and integrate it together with the schools, with the teachers, and the parents. Through our research, basically, children are the most active with their social media and the internet when they're going back to home, and majority of the parents are not very much giving surveillance of what actually their children are doing with their social media, whoever that they're communicating. So I think it's really important to put an emphasizing or interest of education system, having the curriculum, educating the children as well as the parents and the teachers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Agita. Just like to summarize all the speakers' points of view. So Cheng Peng's view is from the perspective of youth experiencing the issue, and Agita is about the efforts to deal with mental health issues as a result of negative experiences with the issue. Moe is sharing focus on trying to understand the motivations behind creation of sexual selfies, and Justitia's view is about dealing with legal cases as well as efforts to address the current existing legislation. On behalf of the APAC youth, I'd like to extend my thanks to the organizers, speakers, and participants for the efforts in making this youth initiative workshop a success. And I'm just going to do a shameless plug here because in this year's Global IGF in Kyoto, Japan, we can continue this discussion, albeit from a different angle in workshop number 237, which will be on online linguistic gender stereotypes. So this truly shows that the discussion does not end here, as the speakers' statements will also be included in this year's synthesis document. So let's continue to work towards building a safer and more inclusive internet that we can trust, and hopefully this can prove that the youth is providing concrete substance to indicate meaningful youth participation, and we are striving to shape the internet with the next gen in mind. Thank you. If we could get a picture together, if you guys are down for that.
Recording stopped. Hi, Justitia, Mole. Oh, Justitia left, and Agita and Cheng Peng. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Not sure if they'll still have a photo up. But
It doesn't
Yeah,
seem
I
like
don't think
a
so.
photo.
yeah.
So,
Oh wait, I think the youth are there, so not
Oh,
quite sure yet.
yeah, they're gathering the people.
Yeah, I can see them gathering right now. Not so sure if they'll be showing you guys on the screen or if they can hear us. But I'm not so sure if they can hear us right now.
I think I'm not sure if we're actually visible in their
Yes.
front. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I gotta leave everyone, but it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agita and Cheng Peng
Thank
and
you so much,
Moin. Thank you so
everyone.
We're trying to include the real people on that screen. Also, hold for like 10 seconds. Okay, look, yeah, we got
Oh, yeah, they're turning the screen off.
Here on the side. Sure. One more, smile, one more, one last one. Smile, and done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan. Thank you, Cheng. Okay, thanks
I
everyone.
thought you were turning off your webcam.
Thanks. I'll contact you guys later. Thanks again. You can drop off.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Luke and Jasmine. Sorry. Okay.